and welcome to your lunar eclipse in Virgo forecast. I'm your astrologer, Cawnawyn, and today we're going to take a look at the chart. I'm hopefully going to give you some tips on how to read a natal chart if you're unfamiliar or if you're in the learning process. We keep it pretty basic here, but in the process I also give you a forecast of what to look for this full moon, which is not just a full moon, it is a eclipse. So we'll talk about how we look at that in the chart as well. So if we take a look at our chart for this full moon, I have this set to 11:55 p.m. in Seattle, Washington on March 13th. That means wherever you are in the world, you might be experiencing this at a different time. I also always cast my charts for these forecasts with a 0 degrees Aries rising, because we're not going to talk about the houses today or the rising sign. We're just going to talk about the planets and their aspects. And so wherever you are in the world, wherever you cast the exact time of this 23-degree, 56-minute lunar eclipse, whenever that goes exact for you, you can cast that chart for your community and see what house it's falling in, and then learn even more about the way it might be affecting your city, your town, your environment. And also, if you cast this chart and put it as a bi-wheel with your natal chart, which you can do online or through an astrology software, this is Astro that I'm using right now, you can do that and find out what house this 23-degree Virgo eclipse is happening for you, and then learn a little bit more about how this might apply to your natal chart. But if we're just taking a look at exclusively the sun-moon relationship, as well as what aspects this is making, oh my gosh, what a power-packed eclipse we have this season. My goodness. So this is starting off our Virgo and Pisces season with the nodes actually having moved into North Node Pisces right now at 27 degrees, and then the South Node being in Virgo. So as you can see, the moon is very close, just 4 degrees away from that node. Same thing with the sun, just 4 degrees away from that North Node. We would consider this to be a South Node eclipse because the moon is next to the South Node. If it were the opposite and the moon was next to the North Node, that would change the whole vibe of the eclipse. So because we know this is a South Node eclipse, I just want to start with this. The South Node eclipse is about a letting go, sometimes this can look like a dissolvement. We are working with Pisces Virgo, so that's kind of part of this. But really, it's kind of a liberation from something that might be holding us back or sabotaging us or causing us to act in sort of a shadow self expression, because the South Node is typically associated with the past life or what we are bringing in and what we need to shed in order to evolve and grow forward. I am an evolutionary astrologer, so I do take the nodes very seriously and into effect, and I consider them to be markers of future life and past life. So if we look at this, there is already an energy of letting go with a full moon. Oftentimes this comes from the opposition itself. Here's our opposing sun and moon together. You can see lots of different oppositions in this chart. This very thick line here, this is indicative of that is an exact opposition, whereas these lighter lines are showing that there's an opposition at play, but they're not as strong as, say, this exact one between the sun and the moon. But of course, we know our 27-degree South Node and 27-degree North Node are also opposing exactly as well, but they will always be opposing because the nodes are always at either end of the chart. So we're dealing with lots of opposing energy here. We haven't even talked about Neptune or Saturn yet. We'll get there. So if we think about what an opposition does, typically this is going to show up in the form of a relationship, but sometimes it's just really clearly a tug of war within the self. What I want to emphasize is that if it is showing up in terms of somebody else coming into relationship with you, this is oftentimes reflecting an inner turmoil, tug of war, decision, choice, compromise that you're having to make within yourself in the present moment. As above, so below, as within, so without. So when we're confronted by this in the form of a relationship, we're able to work with that energy tangibly outside of ourselves and then integrate it inward. So with a full moon, with an opposition, there is typically an energy of illumination that results in a loss. If you're born with a full moon in your chart, you might have had to deal with a lot of loss in your life, or losing of a mindset or a perspective or an innocence or a person in your life. This is something that can show up again and again as a lesson for you because you're born with that energy. But part of that energy also comes from illumination and clarity, right? We lose a sense of naivete or a not knowing when we are shown the truth, when the truth is illuminated for us and we receive clarity. We can never go back to not knowing that thing, right? We might live in denial. That's a whole separate subject, which honestly is kind of appropriate with this axis because we want to take the axis into account. But what I mean by axis is these two planetary energies, right? So we have Virgo, that's where our moon is. So the moon seeking security, seeking connection and nurturing and like self-preservation and care, being in the sign of Virgo. The moon is happier, it's more comfortable. It feels safer with the sense of structure, with a system that it can rely upon, because Virgo is practical earth energy, but it's also ruled by Mercury, right? So many things to consider. So we take into account Mercury's need to create a system, to take in data, and then the earthly part of it says, well, what's practical? What actually works? What is efficient? And the moon finds a sense of security and safety in that. It finds that that needs to be in place in order for it to express comfortably and freely. Whereas the sun in Pisces is a little bit more relaxed. There's less boundaries needed here because the Pisces energy is ruled by Jupiter and it's ruled by Neptune. There are no boundaries here. It's about expansion and it's a water sign. So it's not as concerned with practical data. It is concerned about how you feel. And sometimes that feeling and logic just don't work together. And Pisces says there's room for all the expressions at once. There's room for all the systems at play. All the universes are happening at the same time. And so Virgo doesn't feel quite comfortable with that. It needs precision. It gets down to the finer detail, where Pisces says, let's consider the entire universe. So you can see this dynamic at play, right? And now we take into account, well, now it's a south node, it's an eclipse. The sun is going to be positioned in such a way where the moon is not illuminated because the earth is directly in the middle because of these nodes. So now what must Virgo let go of within this full moon in order to integrate this north node with the sun, right? So if we think about, okay, well, how could a system sabotage us? Well, if we were too caught up in the data, if we were trying to make it too efficient or too perfect of a system, if we're striving for an ideal or an example that is not attainable, and perhaps that striving for that thing is actually getting in the way of real progress because, you know, if we're always trying to attempt to be perfect, what are we shoving away and not paying attention to that maybe is the deeper story here? It can act as a form of procrastination by always striving for a perfection that doesn't exist. Also, the hypercriticality of Virgo, right? This moon, you know, it can tend toward, because it is attempting to make its environment more efficient, it's attempting to strive for a better standard. What can happen is it's clouded by all of the judgment that Virgo can have. It says, well, that's not good enough and that could be done better and you can improve that. And sometimes our Virgo friends get a little overcritical, and not only can it feel like they're overcritical of us, but they're extremely critical of themselves. They're trying to hold themselves to this impossible standard. And by doing that, they're kind of missing a greater picture, right? It's so concerned with the finer details, the minute little pieces that have to fit together in their life, and they can get so hyper focused on that they lose sight of the bigger picture. So how maybe has some of this striving towards something that is unattainable, or this overcriticality, this self-sabotage through guilt, through anxiety, how is this not allowing you to grow and move forward and see the bigger picture, allow for the space for messy emotion to just take place? Because Pisces says it can all be accepted. It's all beautiful. It's all part of the process. Even if it doesn't look efficient, or it doesn't look beautiful, or it doesn't look like it's supposed to, or it doesn't measure up to a standard, there's room for all of that to express. So this South Node eclipse I really see as potentially being rather painful. And here's part of, and I don't want to make it all doom and gloom. This can be incredibly liberating as well, right? But because it's an eclipse energy, it's especially powerful. The moon is being eclipsed here. So what I'm actually seeing is potentially part of this story, right? You see this trine from the moon and the south node to Uranus and Taurus. The sun is also making a sextile to Uranus and Taurus. And if we think about what an eclipse and a lunar eclipse is doing, the moon's light is faded, it's muted, it's being eclipsed. Even though it's supposed to be this giant full moon's energy, the sun is unable to reach it with its light, and so we lose the moon in the middle of this supposedly bright evening, right? And with these harmonious aspects, right? Trine is a harmonious flowing energy. This is earth to earth, Virgo to Taurus of Uranus, right? And then this sextile, water to earth. Okay, so this is kind of allowing for this Uranian liberation to flow effortlessly with this transit. But what can happen with this is something occurs that is Uranian in nature. It shakes the foundation. It surprises us. It shocks us. It sends us into maybe even a panic or a just a complete, utter disbelief of what's happened. So this can come in the form of a relationship, maybe a shocking revelation. This could come in the form of a financial setback or surprise. This could come in the form of something at work that suddenly you don't feel as secure in your career anymore because something is happening, or things are changing so rapidly that you're wondering if you can keep up with everything. This can occur in the form of a literal earth-like shattering. So perhaps it's part of your home that falls apart, or perhaps it's something about your structure that is no longer structurally sound. This can go like mentally, and it can also be very physical. Now, what this allows for is a breaking, an easier time, or maybe just an open door to break that system of hypercriticality, of structure, of over-perfection, right? So Uranus is providing a catalyst here that is in support of this development. But it's not without its hardships, because letting something go is a sacrifice, is a death, is, and it might not even be that clear because that moonlight is being eclipsed, right? So perhaps it's something that rattles you and makes you realize, like, wow, this structure that I've put in place, or this belief that I had, or this thing that I'm trying so hard to attain doesn't even have any value to me anymore, or was valueless to begin with, or was always going to be unattainable, and I have to sit with that, and I have to reconcile that within myself. Maybe something comes from a clarity in a relationship where you realize, oh, my foundations have been shattered here in such a way that now I have this whole new understanding of this relationship that I'm in, except that it really hurts to have to let go of the thing that I built this relationship understanding on before. That structure is falling away. And of course, that liberation means that there's freedom in this new expression, there's freedom in this new truth, but it doesn't come without a cost. So the other thing I want to touch on, right, is, as you can see, our sun and our north node are being flanked by this Saturn in Pisces, so close to that sun. So I really see Saturn as a deep part of this message, as well as Neptune being its final degrees of Pisces here, just the final minutes of Pisces. It's going to be entering into Aries this month. Pacific time, it will be on March 30th. And with that comes a whole new era, frankly, of 12 to 15 years of Neptune moving through the sign of Aries, completely changing what our collective dream looks like. So it's in its very last breath of this. There is already an energy of loss, of ending, of potentially crisis factored into all of this sun's energy. And then Saturn, right? Whatever Saturn touches, it suppresses. So we have the light being obscured by this eclipse, right? To reach the moon. It can't reach the moon. The moon is not in its illuminated glory. And Saturn is also squashing the sun's light, frankly, the sun's vitality. So Saturn in Pisces, for many, I've found, for many of my clients, it's felt like this rain cloud pushing down on our light, on our joy. And part of it is literally our waters being poisoned, being like Saturn is showing us a lot of water related problems that we need to address for the safety of humankind, let alone our animals and our planet. But Saturn also in Pisces, it's trying to create structure where there is no structure, which is the ocean. Pisces is that raging sea that you will like watch eventually erode away any structure that we try to build. Try building a home in the middle of the ocean. It's not going to work. So the sun's light in Pisces is integrating with us, and this North Node is trying to integrate with us this acceptance. Frankly, it's kind of a surrender, right? To we are not in control of everything. And Virgo really doesn't like that. So the moon is not feeling very safe, not feeling very secure. And Saturn comes in and really shows us, Saturn's typically associated with an authority. So this might be an authority figure showing just how little control you have in your life. It might be an authoritative figure in your life. It could be a father, it could be a boss, it could be your spouse, it could be some person who you respect their perspective, that you are going to listen to them, maybe treat them as a mentor who comes in and shows you that like it's not going to work the way that you're trying to force fit it to work. It's not going to be something you can strive and attain for because it's impossible. And once again, we deal with the grief that comes with that, the acceptance of that loss, or the acceptance of that surrender to, okay, I cannot control this thing, whether it be coming from extraneous circumstances or from an authoritative figure in a relationship. And crushing would probably be the word I would use with this. Now, I don't want to deter anybody and make them feel like, oh my God, this eclipse is going to be hard. I do think this eclipse is incredibly powerful, incredibly profound, because what is offered here, right, is now, okay, how do we take a more broad approach to establishing authority over our lives? If we recognize that the universe is at play around us and we cannot control every aspect, then that forces us to take a good look at what we are responsible for, what we do have authority over, and to take more ownership of that. So maybe you're feeling called to step into a discipline. Maybe you're feeling called to step into a new mindset. That is something I would encourage you to lean into. Abandon those things that are procrastinating or sabotaging those efforts and say, I'm going to take responsibility for this. Because why? We are headed toward this North Node in Pisces and Neptune just about to have its birth point in Aries. We're headed towards a new dream. You're headed towards a new era. Are you feeling it? I'd be so curious if you're watching this. Let me know in the comments if you're feeling this pull toward this new chapter for yourself, because this might be the catalyst that allows you to let go of those behaviors that are not letting you grow, that are not letting you evolve forward, right? And I want to be sensitive to, this is not an easy process. There will likely be grief that comes from that letting go, that shedding. But if you're feeling called to shed something, what a beautiful opportunity to do so. We're in the midst of a Venus retrograde right now. We're all being questioned about where is our value coming from? What is our worth built upon? You have the opportunity to design that. So take ownership, take that Saturn authority over what it is you can control, you can take responsibility for. Own it and go forward with a new sense of purpose, with a new mission and a new drive. This is just everything I'm seeing from this eclipse. This is an incredibly powerful lunation without it being an eclipse. And here we are in the midst of eclipse season. I will always say this to anybody in the midst of eclipse season, whatever ideas you're getting right now, we have the nodes super activated with this lunation, not to mention Saturn and Neptune sitting right on top of them as well. So whatever ideas are coming forward right now, the portals are open in a sense. So these little tiny seeds of thought could really blossom into something that you have just no idea the implications of down the road. It's something that could grow now and really turn into like a tree of life that brings vitality to something that you have no concept of where it could go, but it could lead toward enormous shifts in relationships and a completely new transformation. So what I encourage people to do is journal it, write it down, write down your ideas that are coming in right now, write down your dreams. They might not mean anything to you right this moment, but in a few weeks or a few months' time, it could become very, very relevant for you. This is such a powerful time where our subconscious mind is receiving these messages. And especially with that North Node in Pisces, this is going to come from places you don't expect. It's coming from universe. It's coming from spirit. So if you can remain open-minded and open to receiving those things, be in a place of reception instead of going out and trying to make it all happen, right? Trying to form the systems. Let it, allow it to come through, and then just observe, just write it down without any form of judgment. We're trying to let go of some of that criticality. If it feels silly, if it feels out of left field, if it feels impossible, don't cloud it with judgment or over criticality. Just allow it to be what it is, and maybe just set it down and come back to it, right? Okay, so I hope that you've all listened to my Pisces season forecast over on Bonfire Babel. I do this zodiacal season every month over there, so you can listen to my full forecast as well as which days of the month I think are the most magical and potent for any kind of spell work or ritual that you want to do. I am a witch, so I definitely take that into account. You can also listen over there for the upcoming Aries season as well. If you want to book a reading with me, I of course have my calendar open, although it is quite limited right now, but you can always book a recorded reading with me where I will get back to you within 72 hours with a reading that is either short, answering a question, or a longer one if you're interested in a longer analysis of your chart. Thank you to all of my Blue Hour subscribers who are subscribed to my email list. You can sign up for free right now on my website, and you get notified when these videos as well as my Sabbath astrology messages go online, and any other big news I have to share regarding my astrology and my music and my magic and more. Thank you so much for tuning in this month, and blessed be during this lunar eclipse. I hope that you are able to navigate this with grace and with love for yourself, and can find a peace and inner knowing that guides you forward toward a new dream and a new chapter. And may you manifest a life of divine purpose and glory, for you are worthy and you are free. Blessed be.